on my mind.
Somebody in a parachute has just landed on the edge of the ring. Holyfield bit by a dirty Mike Tyson.
Hello and welcome back to the Boxing Show with me, your host Rob Tebbert. As always, I'd like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I am joined by the usual twosome, Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clark, as we review last weekend and look forward to a mega fight. Stephen Fulton versus Naoya Inoue for the unified super bantamweight titles. Barry, how are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
So,
No. You say
Bit tired.
what you say your intro? I'm your host. Introduce yourself like you're fucking famous. But remember on Box Nation and you used to have the screaming girls.
Yeah, I remember
I'm
that.
expecting that because you introduced yourself like it was like, oh, thank fuck Rob show.
I have to introduce it.
No. I'm not taking you out. I sure I am, but I'm waiting for the screaming girls. And I'm sort of laughing. Where are they?
Bunsy's boxing
You
hour.
should guess the screaming girls.
Oh, we should actually, to be fair.
Or men, or collective, collective of
Screaming
male-
people.
Screaming them.
people. I think.
Screaming them. There we go.
Get like a clip from a tragedy somewhere where they're all screaming and use that.
No, I don't think it's that type of screaming, is it?
I don't know. What's the difference?
Yeah, do you expect you to do a celebratory scream or a despairing scream? A scream of anguish?
I don't know.
We can mix it up.
But as
We could do different
as a
ones.
collective, does it sound the same? I don't know. I mean, you're watching it when you're watching it in context. You understand the scream because you're watching something.
I think the sound of the scream
they're all
depends
falling off a cliff
largely.
there. They're falling off a
It
cliff.
depends largely on motivation.
Well, let's have two different screams, right? We blindfold me, right?
I don't know where this is going.
I have two different screams and see if we blindfold us all. Ooh.
Well, anyway, thanks guys for getting the black t-shirt memo as well here on the
yes,
Boxing
good,
Show. We
yeah.
like uniformity.
And I got sliders on.
Have you?
Have I fuck?
Hi Andy, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well.
You had a nice weekend. We love an Andy Clark away day. It's where we get to sit down and just put ourselves into your shoes for the weekend. Where you been?
I had a great one. I was in Thailand. I was in Phuket for the IBA Night of Champions Pro Series. So they had one in Abu Dhabi in December. The likes of Jalolov, Sofian Umahar, Sayed Ashesh, a lot of good fighters on that card. And then they had another one. They had another one this weekend where basically it's back to the old WSB format in that it's 5 3-minute rounds, smaller gloves, 5 2-minute rounds for the females. It's not a team thing, so it's not like WSB, but they're individual bouts. And I'm thinking they're probably going to try and do it a bit more often than once every 6 months is how it's worked out so far. But yeah, it was really good. I've never been to Thailand before, so I enjoyed going there. I had about a day and a half to look around, and then the arena was brilliant. It was this little Muay Thai boxing arena, purpose-built place. About 400 or 500 you could get in there. Really tight, corrugated, kind of plastic roof, so the heat was unreal. People talk about York Hall in the summer, but this was, it was incredible.
Did you wear shorts?
No, I can't go to work in shorts. I can't.
I'm waiting for the event where you go, do you know what? It's so hard to wear shorts.
It will never happen. It will never happen.
Do you have any downtime?
A little bit, yeah.
What would you go to?
Well, cultural things, Barry. Okay. Cultural things. Just looking around the area and checking out the local history and landmarks. Okay. That's what I like to do when I'm away. Yeah. But it was brilliant because there were some really good fighters on the card. Hassan Boydasmatov, he looked tremendous. He's come back to amateur boxing over the last 2 or 3 years. He won gold in Rio, then at the World Championships, then went pro. Then he came back for the World Championships in Serbia in 2021 and lost in the opening round because he wasn't seeded. There was no seeding, and he got a really good Kazakh fighter. But he won the recent World Cup Championships in Tashkent. Really good stoppage in the final against a French guy called Bilal Benama. Slightly odd World Championships because GB weren't there, USA weren't there, Ireland weren't there because of this ongoing feud. But he looked terrific. And if somebody could kind of get hold of him pro-wise, then he could still really do something. But I think he'll look to try and go to the Olympics. And then we had Arlen Lopez and Julio La Cruz, 4 Olympic gold medals between the pair of them. who will still be gunning for Paris next year, and it's just a pleasure to see them always. They're not quite what they were, but Cruz still put down Emmanuel Reyes, who's a really good, solid fighter with a lovely pullback right hand.
And they don't like each other, do they?
No, they're not pals because they were on the Cuban national team together, and the Cruz was ahead of Reyes, and then Reyes moved to Spain, made that move as an amateur, which increasingly some of them are doing now. But it's just great to see them, and you know, you're all in the same place, and you're kind of in the dining room, and they're next to you, and you're passing them the salt or whatever. And I was on the way to the airport yesterday, and I was kind of in a car between Lopez and Cruz. You know, I still find that kind of stuff really, I just love it, because I can't guarantee that I'll get to see either of those from ringside again, maybe, because after the next Olympics that could be them done, because they've been at this a really long time. They're not old, they're about 30, but God knows how many fights they've had. Their records probably say 300 odd, but it's so many more than that. So yeah, I loved it. I love those trips. You know, it's a long way to go for 2.5 days, but you know, I was bang up for it.
I wonder how they feel when they see all these guys defect and earn money and stuff like that, and when they think, oh, I should have done that. When there's any regret there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
It's not,
I suppose,
it's not like
isn't
the
it?
Tefillo Stevenson thing, you know, the love of the people and all that stuff, because it's different now, isn't it?
Yeah, and also he was like he was the guy,
Yeah.
wasn't he? So it's probably a bit different for him. He was like a national icon. I mean, I know like Julio Cruz in particular is kind of probably I wouldn't say the closest to him, but like he's the biggest profile over the last few years.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
mean, if he gets a gold medal in Paris, and because of the way things turned out with COVID, that's only next year. And he's still really good. That would be 3 Olympic golds, and I'd have put him up there with Savon and Stevenson, because quite a few have won 2. Rigondo won 2. You know, Juan Herrera won 2. Ramirez, Lopez as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do wonder that myself, though, because a few of that team have done it. Argalagos has done it, yet to really make his mark. Ramirez has done it. He's doing really well. Cruz has just done it. He was their teammate. Those two, their teammates for a really long time. It's too late for those two now, Lopez and Cruz.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated to see whether Cruz could do what he does over the longer duration, but he's always been able to do it in WSB. And that's something that people have asked about Andy Cruz. You know, can he do that? You know, the naysayers who know nothing about amateur boxing whatsoever most of the time will say, well, it's all very well getting up on your toes over 3 rounds. Number one, he doesn't get up on his toes.
Yeah.
It's very rare that Cubans do nowadays.
Yeah.
They're a lot more
They don't
offensive.
understand the movement, do they?
No, they don't. And it's this whole bullshit kind of equivalent of, can you do it in Stoke on a wet Tuesday? And you just think these fellas can do it
Any which way,
anytime, anywhere you choose to mention.
One fight that I didn't watch that was on that card, so I'd like to ask you about it. Arlen Lopez and Imam Katayev.
Yeah, I thought it was a really close fight.
They boxed earlier on this year as well.
Yeah,
didn't
they did
Katayev won.
on the Golden Belt in
Yeah.
Marrakesh, and Katayev got the win. The judges had it quite wide. I think one had it 5-0 and the other 4 had it 4-1. I thought it was the kind of fight where you could have gone 3-2 either way. Katayev outworked him in the first round. I thought Lopez quite clearly won the second with a good volume of clean shots that were easy to see. And then the scoring came back at the end of the second round, and I think it was 4-1 in favour of Katayev. And at that point, I just thought, well, he can't win now, then, can he? Because if he's not going to win that round. Well, you wonder at that point, because I've done loads of these tournaments now, and I've seen very few really, really bad decisions. And I do just think that's just incompetent. I can't think of any. I know that Umar Kremlev, the president, is Russian, and it's basically a Russian organisation now, and Katayev is Russian. So, you know, read into that what you will when it comes to him getting a decision. But him winning wasn't a scandal, because it was really, really close. 3-2 either way would have been fine. But it was a good fight to watch. It was an absorbing fight to watch. Katayev's from the same part of Russia as Baturbiev, and
You can tell.
you can tell, yeah. They kind of fight the same. He's a pressure fighter.
Quebec.
He's a pressure fighter, and yeah, I thought he would have had some offers after the Olympics to turn pro, because he's got a very pro style.
Yeah, he's boxed pro, hasn't he? So I think he's 3-0 now as a pro.
Right.
And I know that there's been some interest from some of the promoters. Obviously, light heavyweight's a good division for it. He boxed. I can't remember who he boxed. He boxed one of Ben Whittaker's opponents fairly recently, knocked him out of the round. But yeah, good fighter. I like him from the Olympics, from Tokyo, because he was knocking people out, and he had that really close fight with Ben Whitt in the semis. But yeah, good fighter. So anyway, let's go on to some pro boxing. Barry, you were in attendance for the return of Josh Kelly at the weekend against Gabriel Corzo
in a purpose-built basketball arena.
You love a bit of basketball as well, don't you?
I do, yeah.
There we go.
Not British basketball.
What did you make of Josh Kelly's performance?
It was Josh Kelly. That was what he does. I think he had to be more aggressive here, but yeah, it was too easy for him. It was so easy for him that he's going to take criticism for it, because he did hurt his hand. He said his right hand, I think, but Corzo never really come to fight, to be honest, from the offset. He just moved around, tried to fire back when he could, but yeah, it was sort of, and it was a clear winner, so you got to be happy about that. He lost a couple of rounds maybe, and that was just because he took his foot off the gas. That was it. But you expect more after his last performance, and for where he's going, or to where they're telling us he's going, and with the ranking he has, and this was really a gimme for him, and I think he could have done a lot more. He was showboating at times. I know that's the way he fights. I understand that, but there was times there, if he would have stopped showboating and just rained straight punches down, then the referee steps in. I think he got enough speed and accuracy in his punches to stop Corzo from throwing, and he can just rally down. You got a guy beaten. You can hit him when he wants to hit him, but he just didn't sustain any attacks because he didn't want to. That's the truth of it. Like, he didn't want to take any risks. I understand that, but then ends up, because he messed him around, he ends up then with a cut on his nose, a damaged hand. He
had a cut in the eye as well.
Yeah, so this, I think there's a lesson there, another lesson for him, that this is not stepping up the levels, but take it as if you are stepping up the levels. You can't afford to mess around now. You're at the business end of the sport now, and it's you mess around like that against a higher level opposition, as good and talented as you are, and they'll walk right through you.
I mean, I understand he's not. He's certainly not old, but he's not a spring chicken now either. Is he at the stage of his career where he needs to be learning these lessons and not having to go through these instances?
Well, I spoke to Adam Booth and said, how far would you let him off the leash? No, he said, yeah, he's ready to go. I'll let him. So I pretty much, I guess by that he's saying I'll put him in with anybody in a division which is quite tough. I would say at the high level, but he's WBO 1-2, isn't he? Who's number one?
Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu is the interim champion.
Never heard of him.
Don't know if there's a number one.
Didn't even sound like a real person, Tim Tszyu. Some sort of soup. But yeah. So if you haven't got to fight Tszyu, obviously, for to get a shot at Charlo. If Charlo keeps the titles, which apparently he does get to keep the titles, but if he loses to Canelo. Is that right?
I don't know.
If he wins, who cares?
Yeah.
But you would suspect that he doesn't go back to only weight Charlo, and those titles go fragment. But if he's anchored himself in the WBO, and you got Tszyu to go through, then you don't really fancy his chances.
So number one is Bakram Murtazaliev, who's also number one with the IBF.
Okay.
Charles Conwell at number 3. Good fight, hard fight. Xander Zayas, obviously the young up-and-comer from Top Rank. Danny Garcia at number 5 at 154 pounds.
Danny Garcia is not an awful fight.
I mean, yeah, but Danny Garcia is not going to fight him, though, is he?
What's that? No, he's not. There's no money in it for him. But I mean,
I think he's fighting Erislandy Lara at middleweight. Danny Garcia.
Go anywhere, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like, he works on. He's not the biggest of super welters.
Yeah, you'd want someone coming up rather than somebody squeezing into the weight.
And speed-wise, he maybe not speed, and he probably not as quick as the trigger as he once was. So that would help Josh Kelly. But I think, yeah, he needs to take his shot. No, he needs people coming at him, and that's when he's at his best. But yeah, I don't know. He was good though. He boxed well, but it was underwhelming because the guy didn't try and win the fight, and that's how it is, unfortunately. So he's at that level now where he needs to do more. That's all. I mean, if this was a couple of years ago, you'd be happy with the performance. He totally outboxed the guy, dominated him. The guy's number 9 in the world.
Ish.
Or number 8, but but on paper he's undefeated and all the rest of it. He's Argentinian, so he's teak tough and all that. Or North African teak tough, isn't it?
Garda's teak tough.
Garda's teak tough. What are Argentinians? There's something, isn't he? But granite chinned. But yeah. So, but it was set up for him to look fantastic, and I think he can. I think he can. He just needs, and he's with the right guy. I mean, Booth wants you to be. He got that wide stance. He wants you to be more aggressive. I think in the Williamson fight, prior fight, I think he got the balance perfect. He knew that he got a tough guy here who's naturally bigger than him, and he can't try and take any risks. But as the fight went on, he held his feet more and reined in some decent heavy shots. He's not a puncher, but he can punch hard enough to stop you and wear you down. And he has the movement to confuse you. So I think he needs to go about with the fight management needs to be different. Those movements to make you miss all the time. He does it with a view to go, one of those. What am I doing? That's going to go out, isn't it? But no, do you know what I mean? Like, made you miss, rather than, boom, made you miss. Don't panic. And he's good enough to do that. He can spin close to the tag and do all those things. And I think so. All the making you miss early in the fight and the movement should be to empty your tank and make you frustrated, and then produce the opportunities to start working them over. And he doesn't. He makes a miss to play. That's what I should have said. Can you reduce?
No, sorry, we've definitely got to keep that in. But
he makes a miss so he can play, and that's the difference. And at the higher level, he might pay a price for that.
Andy, obviously you covered quite a lot of Josh Kelly's obviously amateur career, but also his pro career when he boxed over on Sky. Adam Booth thinks he's ready to be let off the leash at 154 pounds. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I think you have to if that's what he's saying. I went to the gym, the boxing booth gym, 2 or 3 times last year because I was doing some of the cards with Harlem on and Josh on, and I had a long chat with Josh about the kind of mental problems that he faced ahead of that fight with Alycia, and basically how he got himself into this cycle where when a fight night approached, as it got nearer and nearer, he became kind of convinced that he was going to get ill, basically, and whether that was a result of making the weight or something else, because it did happen at least once to him, that would just twist him completely. And during fight week, he'd be taking all sorts to try and ward off potential illnesses and all this kind of thing, and he'd barely sleep. And then it'd get to the point where the fight came around and there was just nothing there. And he hadn't really gone on record particularly much talking about it. So when that's the case, I feel like it's more likely to be the truth. And talking to him, I believed him. I thought, well, that makes some sense to me. And obviously the fight against Williamson, he went the 12 rounds and he did it comfortably, didn't he? And that was a great sign, because if you can't do that, if you haven't got it in the tank to do that, whether it's because you're drained of all nervous energy before you get in there, or just your stamina physically isn't quite there, and the two things are related, obviously, then you've got a real problem. So hopefully it would appear that that's not the problem. And yeah, as we said, he's not getting any younger. So if you believe in him, then just get him the biggest fight you can get him and see what happens. I mean, the point of that one at the weekend was the guy's ranking, because that's why they vacated the British, was to get somebody to get him up those world rankings. But Barry's point about him making you miss and not making you pay, that's basically it, isn't it? Because everything you do in there has to be channeled towards the primary aim of effectively punching your opponent. You make them miss so that you can hit them and drain their tank, so that later in the fight you can hit them. And he has to do that. It's kind of against the better fighters. It's not a waste of time making them miss, but it's a wasted opportunity making them miss if you then don't come back with something.
Yeah, I thought it was just touching on what Barry said there. You're always going to struggle, I think, with Josh Kelly if he's got an opponent who doesn't come to engage. Kind of tracking, cutting the ring off and making you fight is not really his forte. Just what you've said there, Barry, kind of want to dig in a little deeper where you said about he needs fighters to come to him, which is true. I think that we saw that enough in the Troy Williamson fight, but then we saw in the David Avanesian fight, where if you get someone who is relentless, physically strong, I mean, you're looking at that Tim Tszyu is kind of the guy at the WBO rankings at 154 pounds who you might have to box to win a world title. There's somebody who comes at you like Troy Williamson, who's now gone up to 160. He said that he was tight at the weight, and he kind of boxed like somebody who wasn't really the Williamson that we saw against Cheeseman. But that, for me, is the concern with Josh Kelly, where it's somebody who moves around the ring, he's not really able to track them down. But somebody like a Avanesian or Tim Tszyu, it's just that level above the pressure that he may be comfortable with.
Yeah, well, it's the weight of the shot. I think the move up in weight's better for him, because he looks like he got a bit of weight.
Yeah.
But I think some fighters just need that. You need that. Sometimes you need that pocket of fat. It sounds weird to say. You need a little bit of pocket of fat to burn off when you're a mover. You know what I mean? Being tight, all tight and looking fantastic is great. But you almost got no energy. Like the way you're just burning it, your muscles are all getting all the lactic acid, and you get drained really quickly. So being a mover, you want to be smooth. So you want to be being athletic. It's not all about being cut up. So I think it suits him this weight most definitely. You got a bit more, so he's better for that. Got more energy. You can see that. And I think also he's starting to get the stance right, because you get that wide boot style stance. Well, he's sort of that in the amateurs, isn't he? A little bit of a wide stance anyway, I think, but it's a bit wide and out. And obviously all that is to produce fast, twitchy movements and power. But that drains your tank. We say this all the time. It just drains your tank. But he's getting a little bit right now. You can see it, because that's not his natural instinct. You can see every now and again he bounces on his toes in between movements, because he's fighting himself to keep that what he should be doing to the instructions of his coach and what they've been working on, but to what his natural inclination is to be a little bit more bouncy. And I thought you got the balance right against Williamson, because he had to be more aggressive in this fight. He couldn't quite get comfortable with that. But ultimately, it's about having enough power to stop the guys from walking through you against someone like a Zoo or someone or an Alycia or anyone like that. Is that you can't match them for power, and they are going to hit you and hurt you. But it's like, can you stop them enough to for a millisecond so you can get a different angle? So when it does hit you, you can deflect it a little bit, or you can roll underneath it, or you can catch them when they don't see you. That's what he needs to do. But I do think about the wasted opportunities, as you said earlier. I think they're bad habits. They're great habits when you're dominating against lower opposition, but as you move up, they're bad habits. That's why all these kids, like prospects, fighting journeymen all the time, building up your record, learning fights. Do what you do in the gym, transfer it in the ring. But you also pick up bad habits because it's easy. So you start dropping your hands and showing off, and then all of a sudden you can't put your left hand up because it's muscle memory. You don't do it. So even if you do box with your left hand, though, you should almost train with your left hand up. Because when the shit hits the fan and you're in trouble, you're knackered or you're hurt, you got to go to the default move from back when you were a kid, and that's defend yourself at all times. So you clamp. You gotta go shell up. Got to protect yourself, and then do so, and then move. Otherwise, you're doing all this movement, but your chin up in the air. When you're hurt, you think you're still fast, but because you've been hurt, you're slower, and your reactions are bad, and you think you're moving just as fast, but you're just a better. You're giving them an opportunity to hit. So I'm off tangent a little bit here, but I think that's what it is with him. He has every movement has to have a meaning, and I'm surprised. I would think Booth works like that. I think, if you go by his previous fighters, every movement there's a reason for that. I think he doesn't like. It doesn't. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but you can just see by the way he bounces on his toes now and again that I don't think he likes to be anchored in to throw power shots. So we got to get the balance right. I thought he did with Williamson, and then I looked at this one because the guy who didn't want to really engage, and it felt like he just wasn't quite comfortable, even though he dominated quite easily. But then you're at this level, you have ability. If you can't do it, that's what I would say. If you're just not in him to do it, then you don't criticise because you know what you got. If you know what you got like I don't want to slap myself off, but you go back to someone like me, I'm never going to be walking people down and stopping them. But you know that. But I know he doesn't do that. But I can see he could have stopped that kid. He could have done it. I believe he could have. Just with the consistency of his offense. Big words now, but just a bit of consistency. That's all. Just sustain the attack. So they have to do it from a safe place with long straight shots. He found that guy easy to hit, so easy to hit, too easy to hit, and then played with him. But then that's fair enough. But do it like you were saying. Point. Do it with a view to making him tired, confuse him, and then put it on him, and he could do that. And then that's a good habit. Because he'll need that going forward, because that put it on him to stop him at the higher level. We put on him to stop him from walking through you, not to stop him, just to stop him from bullying you. And I understood that because I had to do that. And then I got to a level I couldn't do it. So, but you have to train yourself to be in that way. So all this messing around that he does, because he's naturally gifted, is not helping him out. That's what I would say. That's raining on his parade here. He had a good, he won with his eyes closed.
Yeah, no, but I think he is on the cusp now. He's number 2 of the WBO. They're looking at world titles, talking about world titles, and you have to judge him as such. With that being said, before we move on, Andy, going to come to you first. Who next for Josh Kelly?
I mean, they need to get him up those rankings a bit further, do they, or do they? I mean, if Adam Booth's happy to let him go now, and Charlo is going to keep hold of those belts, and maybe some of them will become vacant. Who knows what will happen on that score? Then just get the biggest opportunity they can for him at this point. I mean, people were talking about Tim Tszyu after the weekend. I feel like that would be a big ask, but it doesn't mean that you don't do it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you don't do it.
So he's number 2 with the WBO, as we've mentioned. He was number 7 with the WBA, number 11 with the WBC. Number 7 with the IBF. So you've got Liam Smith there, who looks like he's obviously boxing Chris Eubank Jr. up at middleweight. Here's a name that's kind of popped around. James Metcalf.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that fight.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And when we were when Barry was giving his breakdown, I was just thinking to myself, like when we first started talking about this a few minutes ago, I was thinking, okay, well, would it have been better maybe, because I was mulling this over last week, if he kept hold of that British title actually, because for TV it's kind of an easier sell, and defend that against somebody who would actually come and bring it. And his was a name that immediately popped into my head. I think he would be a really good fight for him.
That's a great fight. And also, and I know they're on the same promoters, but they're on the same channel now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And he's highly ranked as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the IBO world champion.
Yeah, I think that would work for him. I think that would work for him really, really well, because stylistically, I think he is the right. I think he's the right fit, and I do like the look of him at super welterweight. Finding your right weight is really important, isn't it? Because you talk to fighters who are regular sparring partners for bigger names maybe, and they can tell you some really interesting things. And I remember one saying to me at one time that during camp, when they were in with somebody who was coming down towards weight, as they were coming down in weight, the heaviness went off their punches a little bit, which you'd expect, but also, and you wouldn't necessarily expect this, I wouldn't, you would know this, they get slower. They get lighter, but they actually get slower because the strength and the snap isn't there. Okay. And I would never think that. You think, well, you get lighter, you get faster, but they get weaker and they get slower.
Your concentration. That's what it is, because it's like when you get tired. When you get tired, you can't concentrate as much, and it's that because you're drained, you're fatigued, all the time, because you're not got no nutrition in you ever. Especially back in when we were doing it, no one was eating; they were just sweating water out you all the time. You know what I mean? Like
and then not losing any weight because your body goes into survival mode and clings onto everything. It was like
you go to amateur clubs for a big tournament. It was like the Green Mile. It was like Schindler's List. It was just really bad. Everyone was it was awful. Everyone did, just trying to make weight for a fight. And so, but yeah, you lack that concentration when you're tired and you're malnutritioned. That's a word.
But Metcalf, yeah, absolutely.
That's a great fight.
I like that fight. Yeah. Liam Smith, Sergio Garcia, I think is also a good fight. But he's boxing Yoenis Tellez on the Spence Crawford undercard next weekend.
Calla Sauerland was just talking about domestic fights. Ben, Eubank, Smith, whoever else he mentioned. That's what he's looking for. He just wants a big money fight for him. That's understandably, but and it's what you want. You want to win money, but you're so close to a world title shot. Whether and I'm right. If Charlo will, I can't see him coming back down if he talks it there.
No, God, that's
and also the money he's going to earn there might be bigger names around there than there are where he is now. And
you can settle back down at middleweight anyway, because middleweight's wide open.
Yeah,
I take Tim Tszyu when I go to Australia. I don't think I struggle to see how he wins the fight, to be honest. But you've got to take it. It's a world title shot. The money would be okay, I think, as well. And you're going to Australia for a couple of weeks.
Be lovely.
No, but it's and the zone could take me because I'm a smaller seat.
There we go.
No, but I mean, but I think it's but you gotta, like you said, it's a world title shot. You gotta go for it. Like you gotta.
Yeah, and fighters almost always do, don't they? I mean, it's. I mean,
I think you win it. By the way,
I'm not trying to take us down a rabbit hole here, but one of the things that I'm finding a little bit tricky at the minute is that around any of these weights, whether it's kind of welterweight, super welterweight, middleweight, a name always crops up, which is Conor Benn, and until we know what's happening with that, it makes any debate around any of this just completely impossible. in a lot of ways. If Callum's going to throw out, maybe Conor Benn, you just kind of think to yourself, well,
that's not a plan, is it?
Maybe
maybe
Nigel Benn then.
yeah,
But it's just not part of the plan until something's sorted out. Until we get some sort of ruling, it doesn't make it. You might as well say you fight the Easter Bunny.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You're
So
just into
that
this realms of kind of fantasy land where you just think it's just not, that just needs, and I'm not trying to take us off on the tangent where we talk about that, but it just really, please, can it just get settled one way or the other?
And also Eubank and Smith, I don't see they won't make the money boxing.
Josh Kelly.
No.
Yeah, they won't. So it's unrealistic. But what he's doing, Kelly, he's just putting his name in the conversation with bigger names, and that's the right thing to do. But I think Adam Booth's saying, we're ready to go. We get an opportunity. He didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much, he's ready now. We're working on stuff, and
if he's saying that too,
this fight was fight management more. I think he said more than anything else. Just not to get any stupid.
Because he's been accused. He's been accused in the past, Adam, hasn't he, of being too kind of cautious with his guys, not letting them off the leash early enough. So I don't know whether that's fair or not, but if he says no, let's go, then that he really believes it.
Okay, right. Moving on, we are going to breeze past Franklin Ignatius's stunning win over Disney Drago. We'll do a whole podcast dedicated to that. But we're going to go over to the Motor City of Detroit for Alycia Baumgardner. Her win over Christina Linardatou. I'm glad I don't have to say Baumgardner versus Linardatou 2-2-2 anymore. But it was kind of, to me anyway, a typical Alycia Baumgardner fight, Andy, in a sense of she came out, she let her hands go early, made an imprint on Linardatou, and then has a lull in the middle rounds, and then what we had at the end of it was a pretty clear decision win for Baumgardner. But I think, and she's made reference to it, about potentially being her last fight at super featherweight and moving up to lightweight. There's big fights up there, as we know, but a revenge mission, successful.
Yeah, and that's what it was about, wasn't it? Because there's nothing for her at super featherweight anymore. She had that huge night against Michaela Mayer. Mayer understandably wanted an immediate rematch. If you're Baumgardner, with the way things went in the build-up, of course you're going to entertain yourself enormously by refusing to give her one, even though that would be the biggest money fight out there for you. And she wanted to avenge that loss, and she's done that. And so now you move up to lightweight, because lightweight is where all the action is, and increasingly so. It's amazing how everyone is just getting drawn to 135, 140 as well. Even if you're 147, like McCaskill becoming undisputed at 147. I know those belts are splintered now, but there wasn't really much going on for her there, to be honest. And it's that bracket. It's lightweight and super lightweight. That's where you need to be. So she was always going to move up there at some point. But I like watching her. And that is what she does. That is how she does it. She looks to really kind of put a mark on things early.
Well, she looks at everything now. Well, women's boxing is not explosive, powerful. Not all women's boxing, but no, the majority of it is it lacks that one thing, doesn't it? The real, and she looks like she has it, but it's a bit like Eubank Jr., where he looked like he was like the biggest puncher that you've ever seen in your life early in his career, because the way he throws his shots. But then you sort of go, but not everyone's falling over. So he obviously can punch, but he's not as big as he looks. And she may be a bit like that. She looks like it, because then you do, don't you? You just think everything from the ring walk up until about 4 rounds. You go, oh, she's the perfect package.
Yeah.
Dances her way in. And all,
Do you think it could be the weight, Barry? Sorry to jump in there.
It might be, but I just think, maybe just some people start that nervous energy, that fast twitch fibers. They start fast, but then their energy really dips. That might be how you train, maybe. Maybe that, because she does put everything to it. She does explode into her punches, and that can drain your energy quite quick. But then for 2-minute rounds, I almost think it's inexcusable to be exhausted by a midway stage. If it's a to and throw fight, then understandable. If it's like a Taylor versus what's her name fight, Serrano, thanks me, Serrano fight. How can I forget that? But if it's that sort of fight, then you can understand everyone getting knackered after 2 rounds. But if it's a fast-paced fight that you're dominating mainly, then, and it's your pace, then you should be able to do that for 10.
Yeah,
I think, to be
agreed.
Honest. If you do 2 minutes and a minute rest, we're not talking about women's boxing. They're not inferior athletes. I don't even know what they do 2-minute rounds, but they have the energy, they have the engine, they should do, because they train as hard, I would presume, as male boxers. So
it's something we've spoken about this kind of intermittently over the years on here, haven't we? I think it's something to do with water retention and the water retention around the brain. I think that's something
safe,
like
if
that.
it's a safer option, I'm not arguing with the 2 minute rounds, because sometimes it makes for a more exciting fight.
Yeah,
but
there was a medical, what were they called, kind of like seminar, I guess, at the WBC convention, and they spoke about it then.
WBC convention, there you go.
Yeah, no, but there are physical differences.
Yeah.
They had four dentists probably. Did they talk about?
It's, and I think sometimes these are things that aren't looked into enough. People just think, well, we're all human beings, we're all roughly the same, but there is a difference with the skull and the head, basically, for females. As I understand it, the hands are slightly different. Feet, males and females are not, they're not the same physically outside of the very obvious differences. The 2 minute rounds gives it a signature of its own. That's why I like it. I'm not against 3 minute rounds by any stretch, and I don't think a lot of the fighters are against 3 minute rounds, but I don't want to see 3 minute rounds out of some kind of bloodlust, because I want to see more people get chinned. And that is what some people want. Quite a lot of the die-hard male boxing fans, you get a gist of what they're saying, and it is kind of like their intentions are not good.
Yeah, you do want to see them.
I don't think it's not good intentions. I understand. Like,
with a lot of people, it is.
Why would you want to see people get hurt? But I mean, that's what sells the sport.
No, I understand that, but
otherwise I'd be like a billionaire, wouldn't I?
I understand that, but there is a section where their motivation for wanting to see 3 minute rounds is not right.
I just think the quality.
But I agree, like knockouts are what boxing's about.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think that I do think about 3 minute rounds with women's boxing is that because the golfing quality still. And some people are getting more title shots because they have to. Because where do they go? And then they get totally outclassed because some champions are not great, other champions are very, very good, and McCaskill before she boxed
Breakhouse.
No. The British girl.
Cameron.
I got terrible with names today. I was there. The fight, by the way, I was there, commentating on the fight. But, that British girl versus the other one. But her defense before that, the girl she boxed was awful. Like it was so bad. Like I could argue she shouldn't have got a license. She was dodging punches like this. Like it was just what you're doing. Like it was like you're moving your head on the shot. It was the weirdest thing. So if that's a 3 minute round, she's getting seriously hurt. Do you know what I mean? Like you can almost like cling on and.
Was that Candy Wyatt? When she got stopped.
Was it Candy Wyatt?
The referee stopped it in the 7th round.
No, not Cameron.
McCaskill, Candy Wyatt.
Oh, she was awful.
Yeah, she's
same thing happened to her.
Yeah, Tasha Jonas. Like, she was better against Tasha Jonas, by the way, even though she wasn't very good. But
it's painful to watch that fight against McCaskill.
Yeah, it was awful, wasn't it? And that. So 3 minute
rounds.
rounds.
A big card. What card was that on? I remember watching it at silly o'clock in the morning. Anyway, go on.
Bam Rodriguez, something like that one, probably. But
something like that.
Either way, it was. But I mean, 3 minute rounds. You can, if you're a good boxer, then you'll see the more quality in the work. I think I think you see that because you can build into a round a bit more rather than just put. Sometimes they're forced to put their foot on a pedal and have a war, and it gets untidy very quickly. I would say that. So, but
with the 2 and 3 minute rounds, like without going on about it for too long, it is basically. It's up to the promoter. You apply to the border control here or the commission in America. You ask them for 3 minute rounds, which is what they do with the men. Like when they put in for a fight, they are asking for the 3 minute rounds, and they know that they'll be given. But sometimes really early in a male fighter's pro career, you might see them ask for 3 minute rounds, and actually they get knocked down to 2s. They'll ask for 4 3s and they'll get 6 2s because the board will look at them and just think, don't know if you're quite ready. It's rare, but it happens. So the protocol is exactly the same, and there are certain female fights where I feel the board over here would do it, and there are others where they wouldn't. But obviously, at a world title level, people are going to want consistency and for everybody to do the same thing. But that can only happen when, as Barry said, the depth is such that the level of the fighters involved in world title fights is consistently good enough for them all to be able to box 3 minute rounds without it becoming just a one-sided fight followed by potentially quite a bad knockout. Because if it's uncompetitive, I think that was what I was driving at, is you don't want to see someone get ironed out, it inevitably ironed out in a really uncompetitive fight, because that doesn't do the sport or anybody any favours.
It kills the sport, doesn't it? It's not a watchable sport. It's just a bully beating up
it's just an execution, isn't it?
Yeah, so I thought I'd remembered it. Beatrice Ferreira, her debut was 4 threes. So then,
Nicola Adams did it. Marlon Esparza has done it. Layla McCarter back in the day did it a lot. But you ask for them and they decide whether they'll let you do it or not. But at the minute, they're sticking with the 2s because, as I say, it gives it its own signature, that
like
breakneck speed.
It works.
It does work. It does work.
Okay, right. We are now going to wrap up our weekend review by talking about a certain Andy Cruz. Andy, going to come to you first. A lot of hype going into the professional debut of Andy Cruz. Well-deserved hype considering his amateur exploits. I thought he was fantastic this weekend against Juan Carlos Burgos. I thought that everything that we wanted to see from Cruz, did the 10 rounds against a very game, competitive, battle-hardened veteran in Juan Carlos Burgos, never been stopped before. Almost went a couple of times, but not quite. But it felt like it was pretty much the perfect professional debut for Andy Cruz.
Yeah, I would agree. He's an absolutely supersonic fighter, and I was lucky enough to see him at tournaments at ringside a few times. Most recently in 2021, where he did within a couple of months, did the double of Olympics and World Championships, which you never normally get the chance to do because the Olympics is even years and the World Championships are going to be odd years. That was his 3rd world title in a row. And, he really had to put his time in on that Cuban team because originally he was at bantamweight. He was behind Robesi Ramirez. Ramirez kind of went missing for a bit. Cruz took his place, but then Ramirez came back for Rio. And then he jumped straight up from 56 kilos to 64, stayed there and just dominated completely. He won Pan Am Games, American Championships. So in those top tournaments, he didn't lose a fight from 2017 onwards. He had the odd defeat. I think Sofiane Umar beat him once, maybe around 2019. Him and Ramirez actually boxed in the Cuban final in 2014. Split decision. Imagine that. Imagine that. There'll be no tape of that, but imagine that. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant fighter, and he is on you relentlessly, finding angles, stepping this way, stepping that way. I always felt in the amateurs that his punches would have hurt more than they looked like they did, that it was that kind of scenario, and he just gave the impression that he could do that for round after round after round. There are always question marks over anybody when they turn pro, longer duration, bigger punches. Can you get their respect? All that kind of stuff. But I always just remember, it's only 3 rounds, but, a guy who was a bit unlucky is Hovhannes Bachkov, an Armenian fighter. Just good, solid, very good actually. Good technically, very aggressive, real pro style. And he kept getting knocked out in semi-finals of everything, basically, because Andy Cruz or Keyshawn Davis would beat him. And I just looked at that and just thought, if you can handle him as easily as you are, because Bachkov, I would say, is like he's as a pro now. If they can get hold of him and move him properly, he could fight for a world title. He's a really good fighter. So I think the sky is the limit for him, really. They'll be pushing him into that Keyshawn Davis rematch because he's one of the very few people who ran him close. He took him to a split decision a few times. And all eyes will be on that. But I think he can move as quick as anybody has since Lomachenko, basically.
Barry, we've spoken in the past about being big fans of Keyshawn Davis, who of course returns this weekend on the Kambosos Hughes undercard. I thought it was a clever bit of matchmaking from Matchroom, getting him in with Juan Carlos Burgos. Of course, his last fight was against Keyshawn Davis, went the full 10 rounds against Davis, and he did this weekend against Andy Cruz, albeit in Andy Cruz's debut.
Shows an intent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're going to push him. I would say, though, you mentioned Lomachenko, and I think that's a good caution to how you're going to match him. I think you want to move him fast. And
Robesi Ramirez as well.
Yeah.
Lost his debut.
Yeah, but I mean, you could fight for the world title tomorrow and be competitive. But
I didn't mean as quick as Lomachenko, but he could be the quickest.
No, I think
He's in that bracket.
No, and I think you're right, but I do think it's still a case of just like that. That's a real statement there. Boxing a former world title challenger straight away, and having to go 10 rounds at a breeze, because they like every great Cuban, they never load up on their punches. That's why they could throw punches continuously. There's a myth about Cubans being these real negative, make you miss constantly, just never throw a punch back. And
that's not true.
It's not like that.
It's just not true.
Because they have a wide stance all the time, which again is about being sharp, but they step, move, and so another song, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, they're the other way, and 1 step back, 2 steps forward. So they move like sort of, they step on you this way and then move back to go back that way, and so they're always like, what they're doing is getting a different angle from you all the time, so you can't hit them, and they're always looking to fire back, and they never load up, so they might not be throwing concussive, brain scrambling shots, but they punch through the target. These modern Cubans of the last sort of 12 years or whatever, maybe longer, are more offensively minded, aren't they, than they used to be? They are, rather than waiting for you to come on and then hitting you with long left hooks. They're coming at you and punching right through the target. And those ones with those long hands, when they get that rhythm, that smoothness to their work that he has, they're hurtful shots with those smaller gloves as well, and tighter gloves. That's more important as a pro. They're hurtful shots there. So you can move in fast, but I would still keep him away from as long as you can. The hardest thing for them is going to build a fan base, because they don't really have a fan base. I mean, you get the TV and you want to set him on light, but where do you put him? He's going to be like a nomad for a while, isn't he? Traveling around the country. You tend to think, put him down Miami. That's where most Cubans end up. But
that's where he is,
trains,
isn't it?
Bozy Ellis out in Miami, yeah.
But it's also like
full of pitfalls,
like almost every Cuban, it's grabbing hold of him and keeping him away from everyone.
It's interesting,
almost
isn't
don't
it?
give him his money. It's just almost crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
no, but you look at the Cuban fighters who've had to do what you have to do, which is defect and leave everybody behind, and he's done it. His son's been left behind, and turned pro. They've won a lot of world titles, but you maybe wouldn't say that anyone has hit the heights
that they could have,
that they probably could have.
Do you know maximise his potential as a pro and dedicate himself was Yoel Casamayor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
he was
a generation before.
He was a fantastic fighter in the 90s when he's a fantastic fighter, brilliant, and beat Wayne McCulloch, didn't he, in '92 Olympics? But he trained. I don't know, but I think he trained. He lived the life as best as you can. So Cubans, you go from nothing to something. You see it all the time, but they're the biggest example of it. They literally have nothing. And then they come here, they get 10 grand, you won't see them till the 10 grand's gone. Then they get 30 grand, you won't see them till the 30 grand's gone, and 100 grand, and it goes on. They just spend their money and enjoy themselves because they never had it. So now they can do things we could never do in our lifetime. Buy silly stuff. I did a different thing. I did things like that. We all do things like that. And then they'll train for the next fight then once the money's gone. And that's what's happened with so many of them. They eat their way out of careers.
I mean, we do expect a lot though, because you look at someone like Rigondeaux and look what he did. He dominated that division. That performance against Donaire that people kind of forget was brilliant. He was the undisputed number one in his division, but just because of the way he boxed, and then he stepped up a couple of weight divisions to box Lomachenko.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
He was amazing, and I used to love watching him. But the expectations are really high, and then. But you look at some others, and like somebody like Alycia Solis, for example, really good fighter.
He went to Miami and had a great time.
He definitely went to some fast food outlets, didn't he?
Oh, my Perez is still fighting Cruz, didn't he? But,
all the ability you could want. Yeah,
you could just you pick a name out of the hat and you go, he could have been better. He could have been better.
But a lot of them have won world titles. That's like.
What was that Cruz with Gonzalez? Remember him?
Yeah. He boxed
over in Germany, wasn't he? Based in the end. Yeah. But either way, So, but Rigondeaux is the prime example of a guy who was really talented, could do exactly what he wanted to do, absolutely brilliant, one of the most talented boxers who ever lived. But he almost had disdain. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'll do it my way.
He could have stopped everyone really, and he could have been more excited if he wanted to. And he went, no, I'm not doing that.
No,
I'm not getting enough, or whatever his reasons were. I just can't. Or maybe he didn't train. I haven't got it in the tank, so I'll just move around, make him miss. He showed him Donaire how great he could be. how great he could be.
Oh yeah.
He took risks against a really big puncher. And Donaire was fast as lightning, by the way. People forget how fast he is.
He was number 3 pound for pound fighter in the world at the time.
And it was a great fight, but it was only one winner, and he showed that, and that was his launch pad to be like one of the greatest Cubans who ever turned professional, and he sort of blew it, to be honest. He had to take the Lomachenko fight for money, but
he should have never been up there. Super featherweight that fight was.
He should have been the name, and again, it's hard to sell because the fan base is not there. But then he becomes a TV attraction because he's brilliant. He ticks the box for us, ticks the box for other people. He's a spiteful puncher, by the way. He could have done it all, and Andy Cruz can do it all, and he seems a different animal, but. Let's see what he's like after 2 years of living in the States.
Well, he's a little bit. I mean, I really loved it. I loved everything about the performance at the weekend. But his ring walk was great. He came out, he was dancing, he was this, and he's good. Like, I think they've done a good job with him as well.
We cooked some Cookie Monster.
Cookie Monster, yeah. We had the we spoke just before we came on air, didn't we, about the fact that Keyshawn Davis is boxing this weekend. So getting him out the week before, there's obviously the talk between him and Keyshawn Davis fighting an ex-Keyshawn Davis opponent. That's good. It's very good to kind of build them side by side. And it's now, like, for me anyway, after seeing Andy Cruz make his professional debut and box really well, and I really did think he boxed outstandingly well, that's now a fight that I'm really interested in. Keyshawn Davis and Andy Cruz. I mean, I don't see it happening anytime soon, but it's a fight that we can really build into something because of all of the history between them. You've got Davis as this kind of one of the new breed in America. We spoke last week about how American boxing, certainly the young guns in American boxing, are really coming through. And for, everybody needs a dance partner.
He'll want it as well, Davis.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he lost 4 times to him in the amateurs. He's going to want to get that back. We've kind of spoken about this in the past, Andy, about that whole welcome to the pros stuff. And, we had people on the weekend critiquing Andy Cruz's performance. He's boring. He can't do this. He can't punch. He can't do this, that, and the other. It's a professional debut. He's boxed 10 rounds. I was really impressed with him. He didn't get the stoppage, but I don't think anybody really expected him to get the stoppage over Burgos. I spoke to you, Barry, about beforehand, where it was nice to see the first couple of rounds just coming in, having a look, measuring, getting his timing down, and then the middle round started to really step on the gas, and then he closed the show really well as well. I thought there was an awful lot to like about Andy Cruz's performance, and get him back out as soon as possible. Get him calling out Keyshawn Davis all week this week, and then just try and get that narrative in there.
That's the important thing. Keep getting him out, just like ramming in people's faces. Here I am. Yeah. I am like the greatest thing to turn pro since whenever you want to pick a name. Lomachenko. I'm the one to take over everywhere. And I beaten him. He avoided me as an amateur. I played with Davis. He just sell that, because Davis will want to fight. Because he has that Shakur Stevenson mentality, I think, where they don't fear nobody, and rightly so, because they're brilliant. But that's a great fight to build up, really. And then but like right we're saying, picking an opponent that he's boxing, and I would do that. Like, I get the fringe guys who are maybe on the way down now, and the guys who are on the way up, but you don't think they're going to get this, so grab them early. So you get the credit for beating a guy who would have gone to the top. Do you know what I mean?
Keyshawn Davis is boxing Francesco Patera this weekend.
That's a good fight for him.
Patera.
I just really hope that they can do all of that and get the public to really buy into it, because it's never really, off the top of my head, it's never really happened, because people are always talking about Stevenson and Ali, and then Savon and Mike Tyson, and obviously that didn't happen. I know it's heavyweight and that makes it bigger for a start, but the kind of Cuba USA thing, amateur rivals, I just think it could be absolutely mega. You think about Robeisy Ramirez and Shakur Stevenson, but you don't really see that. They're drifting a bit too far apart in weight. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, they have. That's a good point. They're just in completely different weights now, aren't they? One's at lightweight, one's at feather.
But even then, his success has gone way over his head. That's a problem.
I can't remember there being a kind of Cuban-American rivalry in the pros of recent times.
No, and there's been I got quite obsessed with this for a while. I kind of, I still am really, but like one I mentioned earlier was this guy Angel Herrera, who potentially had this amazing rivalry with Pernell Whitaker, but then they didn't box in '84 at the Olympics because Cuba didn't go. And it's just things like that. We've been kind of denied a few of them down the years, and I just love it if they could really make this happen, because we talked about it a few weeks ago, and I think we all feel like there's not much going on at heavyweight at the minute, and we all know why that is. But in America, you just feel like something could be about to really happen there with some of the fights getting made, just to push boxing back up towards the forefront of their kind of sporting roster, because it is a bit of a sleeping giant over there, you feel like, don't you? And with Davis and Stevenson and Haney, and big fights getting made, and you look at Spence and Crawford, and this wave just starts to build up, and everybody can just start to ride it. And to get that going, get Cruz and Keyshawn Davis firing off at each other and just build that, it'd be brilliant.
It would be. It's kind of like we were talking about the heavyweight division being, if the heavyweight division's thriving, I mean, kind of take out this year, but the heavyweight division's thriving, then the rest of boxing does well. The trickle-down effect. It's kind of the same with America, really. It's still the biggest market, it's still the strongest market. If American boxing's thriving, then the rest of the world can get a bit of the trickle-down.
And I just think with the way things have gone with, Saudi Arabia coming in with all the backing they've got to get the big fights, and some big stuff ending up in the Emirates as well. If the USA could just kind of answer that, and I know that the Saudis really wanted Haney Lomachenko and kind of felt like they'd got it, and it stayed in the USA, and I kind of liked that. I just thought, let's have a bit of a power struggle, and then in the middle of that, we can just continue doing our own thing, because boxing's still strong here and it's still popular, and what goes on either side of us, whether we travel east or west, it doesn't really affect us too much, except for our real top names who, like you say, America is still the biggest. It's still the biggest market. It's still, for showbiz and entertainment and sport, it's still the biggest, isn't it? It's just always has been.
Okay, right, before we move on, that win was for one of the IBF trinkets, the coveted IBF International title or whatever it was.
I had one of those. Good, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. It's on the mantelpiece at home. So who next, Barry, for Andy Cruz?
There's a boxer called Francesco Patera.
Yeah, that's basically what it's got to be. Whoever Keyshawn Davis boxes, I'm going to box him next time. I do a better job on him.
But I remember talking to Top Rank a while ago, and they threw that name out, Patera. I think it was in January when they were over with Beterbiev for his fight with Anthony Yard, and I think it was Carl Moretti said to me, "Have you seen Patera?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I saw him against Lewis Ritson. We know him quite well." And he said, "Right, we're thinking about him for Keyshawn Davis." And I just thought straight away, yeah, that'd be that's a good choice of opponent for him.
Similar, because when he boxed Anthony Yiggett as well. He boxed Yiggett after Burgos, so Burgos wasn't his last fight. But yeah, somebody like Yiggett, like sort of European level-ish type of guy.
He'll be up for it.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a fringe World 10, doesn't he? That sort of level, I think. So he wants to be right behind Davis when Davis fights for the world title or wins if he can. If he can. It depends on timing, doesn't it, as well, by the way. There's really brilliant names around them. Let's not forget that.
I don't think they're going anywhere weight-wise, those two as well, either, are they? I think that works too, because we mentioned like Ramirez and Stevenson, and they're just moving a bit too far away from each other, and then you might have a kind of Rigondo Loma scenario where
you don't want that.
It's a great fight, and it's two double Olympic gold medalists, but actually when you look into it closely, didn't really work.
There's I'm sure he'll have ideas of his own, but just trying to think about network politics and who's where and who's boxing on what network. Somebody boxing on DAZN that I wouldn't mind seeing fight Andy Cruz. William Zepeda, that fight.
Yeah, they could do that.
Can't see why William Zepeda would want to fight Andy Cruz, by the way.
That's going to be the case for almost everybody, though, isn't it? You just got to pay them.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's it. And it is over. I'm really interested in it. So I spoke to Eddie Hearn about this in Mexico. It was the day after when they'd announced it. They announced it, the Canelo fight. And I sort of said to him, "Is this kind of like because you had Danny Aryalusanov, and you didn't really, not attaching any blame, but you didn't really. That didn't work out. So now you've got another elite amateur who doesn't have. I mean, to be fair to him, he has more fanfare than Aryalusanov would have had because of the Keyshawn Davis connection and what have you."
He's much easier to sell in America because he's Cuban, isn't he? Than
Cuban, and he's got the rivalry with the American. Yeah. But still, it's an elite amateur who's probably not going to come into the program and start knocking everybody out left, right, and centre. Like, how are you going to build him? So I think it's going to be an interesting one to see how Matchroom do with Andy Cruz.
Another thing that no one's ever really managed to do. I mean, you look at the massive fan base they managed to get around Cotto with the Puerto Ricans, and now they're trying to do the same with Xander Zayas. In New York and Orlando's got a massive Puerto Rican population, and Corzo and Madison Square Garden. They've no one's ever really managed to do that with a Cuban. And there are loads of Cubans in the USA.
Yeah, but they don't. I guess the market for it's all pay-per-view in it really. I guess the market for pay-per-view is not really there.
But just to get them,
Yeah.
get them out of the houses and into seats in the arena to really make a thing of it. You know, it's an Andy Cruz fight night, you know, in Miami. You know, if you're all self-respecting Cubans must go.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
That's it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a really good.
It's going to be a lot of money though.
Yeah.
He's got.
But you've got the.
Eddie Hurton's got to be a bit of Frank Warren this year. I know, because like Eddie, fantastic promoter, of course, but you know, they run their business like a real business, don't they? And if it doesn't make money, then we don't do it. You know, that's what it's seen. I don't know. This is what it's seen from the outside. Like, you know, like every show, if it doesn't make a profit, then why would we do it? And that's understandable. Where Frank makes money, of course, Frank makes millions, but I mean, he takes a punt.
You've got to invest in the
Joe
fighter.
Kazagi spent. I can't miss Joe Kazagi, but I mean, he spent fortunes in it, and not getting no return for such a long time. You know, believing that this kid was going to couldn't sell a ticket, but. Good-looking kid with a good style. When he really tried, he had a really good style to watch. Not always, but when he was good, he was very good. And so I can sell him to TV, but TV didn't want him. They kept pushing him back. And fans want to tell you, this is going to be the kid. This is the one. It's going to change it for us. And you know, and he took a gamble. He said there were so many fighters, and haven't always worked out. But it works out more for him than it doesn't. And I think with doing something like Cruz, who's a brilliant fighter and will be a world champion if he's committed, of course, if he's dedicated to his craft, which is the most important talent to have, more than actual skill itself. But selling him and getting your return back, you have got to spend. Because you've got to spend to get people like Cepeda, over the odds to fight him. The other fringe world title contenders, if they want to fight him, you've got to pay me big. Jorge Linares, they'll get him at the end of his career now, but he's going to want a big payday before you bash him up.
Yeah.
I say bash him up.
No, it's true. Yeah, but it's
disrespectful. But you know what I mean? That's the sort of thing.
God, that'd be great. I think that's probably the one I'd most rather see, Andy Cruz against Jorge Linares.
I think Linares, I saw rumours that he's going to box Jack Catchell at 140, which I don't.
I'm not trying to scupper that for Jack, because he's had to wait, hasn't he?
Oh, Jack gets all the luck anyway.
Right, okay, we are going to move on. Just a quick aside in AOB from the weekend. Jermaine Franklin returned with a win over now my new favourite heavyweight, Isaac Munoz. Sort of like a little Andy Ruiz light, although I'm not sure how light he was. But I really enjoyed watching that fight. Eddie, bring back Isaac Munoz, who was sort of like a heavyweight Canelo, really, but like as if Canelo had to make heavyweight sort of thing, not a heavyweight version of Canelo, as if Canelo boxed a heavyweight, which is I enjoyed it. Watch it and you'd enjoy it. And then
I would watch it, but
and a couple of results from this past weekend. Stoppage win for Elvis Rodriguez over Victor Postel. I love Victor Postel. Don't want to see him box again. I think he's probably at the end of his career now. And Frank Martin with a narrow points win over Artem Harutyunyan. Andy, we said about it being a close one. It was indeed.
Yeah, I didn't see that. So what did you think of the decision?
It was a right decision. I've had Martin winning the fight, but it was a close fight. Harutyunyan's good, well schooled, busy, and Martin had to work it out. We said this beforehand. We said before the fight that it was going to be a fight where he's going to have to work some stuff out. And I think like with Martin, I think naturally he is always going to be, because fighters are, but certainly PBC as well. I think they're looking at that 135-pound mix, and you've got Davis and you've got all of these other guys in and around the weight class, and they're trying to kind of get him into that group, and he's well ranked. I think it was a WBC eliminator as well. But I think he is just a couple of fights from that. Last year he had some good performances. He had that really good win over Michelle Rivera before Christmas. Didn't box them for 6 months after, which is not ideal. But I thought it wasn't the statement win that he was looking for. But I still thought he won, but in a close fight.
It'd be one of those wins that will look better after,
potentially, because Harutyunyan can box. So I mean, I'd like to see somebody like Harutyunyan for someone like Andy Cruz, like somebody who's been there and well schooled in his own right. But yeah, a good win for Frank Martin, but probably not the performance that he would have been looking for. But anyway, it now brings us to our preview section of the show. We are going to be looking ahead to Stephen Fulton versus Naoya Inoue, the unified super bantamweight championship of the world. Andy, going to come to you first. It's a fight that we've all been looking forward to for months and months, and it's finally upon us. How excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think in a way is always a 10 for me. I think in the whole of world boxing, if you look at who delivers most consistently what you want from them at the very highest level, it probably is him. I think of any fight I've watched of his, I don't think I've ever really left one disappointed with the experience. At some point, he's going to lose because he'll come up against someone who's very good and a bit too big, because he will just keep moving up in the weights, won't he? If he feels like there's nothing really left for him to achieve at a certain weight, then he'll go up again. And history shows that at some point it's a bridge too far. I wonder whether Fulton could be that fighter. In a 2-horse race, this is exactly the kind of scenario where I would get tempted into putting my I was going to say hard-earned money. That's a debatable point on Fulton, because I do feel like he's a very, very sound fighter, and he was about to move up to featherweight, wasn't he?
Yeah.
To box for an interim title, I think.
He was going to box Brandon Figueroa in a rematch.
Exactly, and then this appeared, and so he's stayed where he is and agreed to go to Japan. So I definitely do give him a chance, but at the same time, it's very, very difficult to... There's no real... I haven't really seen anything from Inoue so far where I look at him and just think, that's his vulnerability. I just haven't, and that's quite telling, isn't it, really?
Doesn't bend from the waist. Doesn't need to, that's why. The man has no lateral movement, he's shit. I've never seen the man pivot in my life. I actually have. But yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he? That's enough, really.
So that's Barry's insight. Let us know who you think will win. No, so yeah, Barry, going to come to you. Stephen Fulton, there's a lot of people who are quietly confident in him springing what would be a significant upset. I think he's a great fighter. Anyway, gone to the number one guy at super bantamweight, but is still a resounding favourite. Do you give Stephen Fulton a chance of springing the upset?
I think it's a great fight. And I think he'll be competitive all the time, because I think he's tough and he has good lateral movement, and he fights off the ropes, which probably will end up being his undoing in the end, ironically. But it's hard to see how he overcomes it. You got to be hoping, and maybe Paul Butler absorbed a lot of punishment for 11 rounds, or 10 and a bit rounds. And if that was a bantamweight or a flyweight or whatever it is, if you're going down in weights, that wouldn't have lasted as long. You just think that maybe, there was a bantamweight, but I mean, you just think is moving up in weights, they can just absorb the power. They still feel the power, and it's still power, and it can still knock you out. But the fact that you can absorb it a little bit more, will that help Fulton? He'll feel it, but it's not the same, because you can't keep going up in weights.
Yeah, like Canelo against Bivol
forever. Yeah. And maybe that, and will that be it? But I think that's the only way. I don't see it as any other factor. I think he'll have a good go, but some of the things he does well won't work against Inoue, who never loses his shape. I mean, you talk about discipline. Like, the man never deviates from what he has to do. He doesn't bend from the waist. Now Fulton's got lovely athleticism, the good lateral movement, and all the rest of it. And Inoue doesn't do that, but he never loses his shape. The technique is flawless. He never leans. He very rare. And if he does square his feet up, it's to move around the body, to throw a big hook. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't. There's never a movement without a thought behind it. But it's obviously, they're diligent in their training, so the thought process is ingrained in them already, so he'll do it almost like muscle memory. But everything he does is the right thing. And he keeps that technique and that shape for 12 rounds. Every punch is a solid shot, even if it's not a knockout punch. His jab he's fast. He can counter punch. That's fucking horrible, isn't it? He can counter punch, which is what he likes to do. Actually, he's on you, but he wants you to throw. He throws that left hook over the top, and you can't see it, and because he's just so great technique, it looks like it's not even a heavy shot, because he'll turn his body so subtly, but he gets that whip in it. He's not like, if you're athletic, you can see when a fighter's loose and athletic, you can see the power, because you can see the movement almost, though the fighter doesn't see it because it's so fast. But with him, because he's literally like skinny little thing, isn't he? Skinny little rat. But I mean, he does that twitch.
There's no fat on his shots, is it?
But there's no tell.
That's what I mean. It's just all...
Yeah, it's like from there. Boom. That's unbelievable.
There's that really brilliant clip from Ellie Sekbak where he's in the gym with Gervonta Davis and he starts to talk about. He asks Gervonta Davis about Inoue, and Gervonta Davis's face lights up, and he goes, he is good. He goes, and Sekbak goes, he goes, oh yeah, he's a puncher, and Davis goes, no, he's not a puncher. He's like, he's good. He's balanced. He's like the way he places his punch. He's like, he is good. Like you just see Davis, who's like very nonchalant about everything. You don't ever see him like get excited about anyone. And as soon as he hears Inoue's voice, he just goes. And that's really high praise. Like as they say, real recognize real.
It's really telling. When you kind of think about how fellow pros talk about each other. I've never heard anyone suggest that Inoue's not all that.
No, I've seen plenty of people on Twitter say.
And the pros with the ego to want to not give anyone credit because they want to be the very best, and they're going, no man, this kid's good. The thing, he's always in a position to throw a fast shot. He's always in a position to throw a power shot. Like he never, like I said, never loses. I always go about losing his shape. I mean, he's literally the epitome of not ever making a mistake. He must make a mistake. He must, sometimes he wants to hit you with a jab, though very rarely. There's very few things he does wrong, and he has a good engine.
He can take a shot as well.
Oh yes, you can take a shot.
His face broken by Noni. I don't know, which is something that there's
not much to encourage you, is there?
No, there isn't.
Accurate, patient.
But it's one of the things where people kind of throw. And again, I don't really kind of consider the people who I don't think are very objective, but some people will throw that at him. Oh, well, Donaire broke his cheek, broke his eye socket or whatever, and wash Donaire and old Donaire. Donaire is one of the great punchers of all time, but certainly of his generation. And in that fight down at bantamweight, which, I think everybody going into that, the WBSS final, the first fight, everybody thought that he was going to blow Donaire out, obviously, because we hadn't seen Donaire tested at bantamweight in a long time before they had the bout with Ryan Burnett, and then he beat Stephen Young in the semi-final.
And he's an older guy coming down in weight, and you kind of
exactly
worry about that.
But then we saw how the rematch went. When the rematch went, he was gone in 2 rounds and completely blew him out.
By the way, and he throws a great left hook to the body.
Yeah, he hurt him in the first fight. He hurt Donaire to the body with a left hook to the body there. And I feel like, you mentioned the Butler fight earlier. Aaron Dipayan was another defense when he boxed on a top rank card where you had guys who weren't trying to win the fight.
Yeah,
and they're on the back foot. And yes, Butler went, and I know Gallagher and
but that Butler fight reminded me of. It reminded me of Martin Murray going deep against Golovkin.
Yeah,
he went the deepest anybody had up until that point. Kudos for that.
But wasn't
that's
really
what
trying
it was
to
about.
win. Wasn't really trying to win the fight.
You go in there to try and win, so you feel it. Then what happens in fights is that you want to try and win, but you don't see. I guess I've been in a similar situation, but I had more opportunities to maybe throw punches. But you don't. You see I want to try. Where do I go? I know I can't go now because I can't. It's not safe. You know what I mean? When you felt the power straight away, and also the speed and the accuracy, everything that Inoue has. It clams you up. It'll clam up a very good fighter. Like a world-class fighter, a former world champion or whatever, or a current world champion, it clams them up, and they know if they make a mistake, they're done.
And that's
they don't throw.
That's it.
Because it makes you more tense and more tight.
He sucks the air out of you. Sucks the power off you. You've got nothing. Then. It's
so impressive to see, isn't it? Even at that really highest level where someone, they prepare as best they can, and you're kind of mentally, you try and make sure that you don't buy into any kind of hype, you don't expect anything in particular, but you get in there and then it's just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, this is different.
And Manny Rodriguez, really good fighter, on that Mad Night World Boxing Super Series in Glasgow with Josh Taylor and Baranchik, and he looked shocked when he got put down. He looked shocked. I remember I did the fight between Golovkin and Curtis Stevens when Golovkin hit Curtis Stevens with a left hook, and he's on his back and he just puffed out his cheeks as if to say, what was that? And he did get up, credit to him, but every now and again you see that. And when you see it at the highest level, you just think, oh my God, like this bloke's something different, because the fighters at that level, they don't expect to be shocked, do they? I don't think.
But also, especially if you might think you've got a good chin, and you might have a good chin, but when you face a really world-class puncher and he's elite. I hate that word, but he's above that, isn't he? And speed as well with it. All those factors, not just natural weight. He has all the other factors with him. But Fulton's good. If Fulton get that in and out movement with his feet and jab with it, but you got to make sure Fulton, when he throws a punch, you got to take that step out. He can't you can't, like, you think, the first thing that people will be thinking, push Inoue back, push him back. Because the puncher, you don't want him to be coming forward, pushing off the shot. You want him to be leaning back, but he leans back well with the left.
Yeah.
So, and also, going into the fire, it's a risk. So, I think if you can use athleticism and because your lateral movement and punching it out with the jab, Fulton punches with the body really well with the jab. It works for him. He's long, he got long reach, long punches with the jab. But the counter right hand of Inoue over that left hand will put him to sleep. He'll literally be like giving himself to him. So some of the things he does really well won't work for him, but that stepping in and out will work for him.
Concentration. Mentally, that must just destroy you. If something that's always worked and been a plus for you all of a sudden becomes something that can be exploited.
Well, you're banking on this is what I do best. So this is my top trump.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you realise you can't play it. I mean, that's just it's bleak, isn't it? If you find yourself in that scenario.
That's what just take away what you couldn't. Once you take away the person's offense,
Mayweather was the same.
Yeah, once you take away their offense
in a different way to Nasr.
But you're hurtful. Like Nasr was hurtful.
So
like, then you're like, so he makes you slower because they make you panic. And they all do it at a different level. I say also time to say the same thing. Then I just re-record what I said last week. But I mean, well, they make you panic. Whatever the great fighters, top guy, they make you panic. Whatever way they do it, Inoue is the power and the speed. So then once you're tempted to throw, but you know you have to throw. So with that, then you're not relaxed. So for Fulton, you got to stay relaxed. you got to stay relaxed and loose because you want to be as fast as you can be. But also, you've got to have that concentration because you lose concentration for a second and he pushes you to sleep. So how do you keep that laser focused concentration without being tense? Well, you're a world-class boxer. You've done all your life. You should know what to do. So you do know what to do against certain opposition. Against a guy now who's going to, as soon as you make a half a mistake, he goes crack. You might take it, but you know you're being hit. Yeah, I don't think he's a weighty puncher where you feel it on your chest and go, oh. But I think
it's that snapping.
Oh, mate, yeah. And I know sometimes those shots feel like this sounds. That's what they feel. No. The ring. Whoa. What was that? And then he's got you then because then you think I got to do some work. I'm not doing anything. And then but the more you think about that, the tenser you get and the tighter you get, and then all of a sudden you being a fast boxer and a good boxer and a world class athlete, you do this, or you leave it out there because you're too tight, or it shortens your distance because you're contracting your muscles, and they slow you down. Nas did it. He slow you down to a snail's pace. He looked super fast, and actually he was super fast, but he wasn't as fast as he looked. He just slowed you down, so he gave the impression it was all a mirage. He gave an impression he was shit, really. He gave it, and I knew he does it. He is fast and all the rest of it, but he slows you down to a pace where it makes him look lightning fast.
Just playing devil's advocate here. How does Stephen Fulton win the fight?
With that concentration is key for him. He has to keep that concentration all the time through anything. I think the in and out movement with the feet, the jab's going to be a weapon if he can establish the jab. But he has when I don't know, mate. I'm trying to think what he would do, but then what he does well puts him in trouble against Inoue. Fighting off the ropes is great, but Inoue does move around the target really quick, and he's not going to be there like when some of the success that Fulton I felt had against Brandon Figueroa, because Figueroa's on top of him and he's just finding little places inside, so he could use the ropes as a leverage to rally off.
But Inoue doesn't really go there. Inoue is much more likely to touch a couple of steps back and then go again rather than stay on the inside.
Well, Inoue when he's watching you, I think his vision is that he sees more than you. So like, cause he's so focused and he's so like this, like so intense that if you're on the ropes, if you move back off the ropes, I feel this. If you move back off the ropes, as if you to like make him miss and counter, he takes the step. So he's short. I'm taking the step on the target, keeps you close or puts you closer, but puts you out of their reach. So your vision's that, his vision's this. So he can see where he can go. But if you move on the tag, because you're the one with the back to the ropes, you're also more squared on, so he can stay close to you just by taking that back foot round this way. Do you know what I mean? That making sense? Yeah. Or the other way. So once you do that, he'll just move around to the side, and then you got to turn. Then he hits you, like that, and a lot of great fighters do that. But so he won't be in front of you, I don't think. Or he just slides in and doubles up with the backhand. The hardest thing for Fulton is if he can be fast enough to not take a counter shot, because Inoue will try and walk you down, but he wants you to throw first so he can hit you. So you throw a right hand, he throws that left hook over the top straight away. No, that's what he wants to do. You throw the jab, he comes back with that right hand really quick, nice and long. And I think if Fulton get that movement with the feet right in and out and jab, but step back with it really quick. I mean, if he can make Inoue miss a little bit early, just make him so he's not quite as comfortable and not quite as focused, and he's having to think, oh, I'm missing a few times here now. Just make him think a little bit other than he's thinking about zoning in and knocking you out. Make him think about other things. Try and give him something else to think about, rather than just effort. So you do that through effort sometimes against other fighters. You just like Figueroa does it with effort, doesn't he? Makes you think about, rather than thinking about being offensive, he just forces pressure on you, makes you you got to start defending yourself, and takes away some of your good work. You can't do that against Inoue, because you walk onto a shot you can't get up from. So yeah, but it's a great fight. It's a fantastic fight, because I know Fulton will have a really good go.
Yeah.
But
he's the number one in the division.
Yeah, he is, and I think he takes a shot. I don't think he gets ironed out really early, but I just think the accumulation of it all in the end clams him up. Then he becomes a defenseless target, I guess. If I get this wrong, I'm done.
Andy, you mentioned it earlier on about Stephen Fulton potentially moving up to featherweight. It seemed as though that was going to be the most likely route. He was going to box Brandon Figueroa for the interim belt, for the WBC interim title. It hasn't happened that way. I guess my question is, a lot of talk about Inoue going up in weight, up to super bantamweight. Is there any question marks around Fulton staying down at super bantamweight? Because he is big at the weight. That's one thing that came from Shingo Inoue, Inoue's trainer. His dad said, I didn't expect him to be as big as he was. You see him out of camp and he's a big unit at super bantamweight. Could that be something that people maybe not addressing? Fulton staying down, and also Inoue moving up from bantam, by his own admission, was very tight at the weight for the Paul Butler fight in particular. Could people be ignoring that and just looking at it more from a kind of a simple small man moving up?
Yeah, possibly, because it can go one or two ways, can't it? Because the fact that he was going to move up to featherweight, as we said, is significant, because it suggests that he maybe needed to, but certainly felt comfortable doing it. There
was nothing in his performances that suggested that he was tight at the weight. But
he's obviously on that tipping point,
yeah.
And it's just a question of whether for this one more.
And he's been paid very handsomely.
Yeah, performance-wise, he's capable of making that weight, hard though it will be. This might be his last one at super bantamweight, but he needs to hope that he'll be the biggest and strongest at super bantamweight that he's ever been. This is the last time he's able to do it and do it properly, and then he would have to move on, and that this will be the peak night for him at that weight. But it could go the other way, and it'll be too hard. And he'll be too depleted for the reasons we talked about earlier in the pod. You know, for him to win, it needs to be the former, not the latter. Therefore, you've got somebody who could be that guy who is very good and also too big. Because I do feel that that's, at the minute, when you look at the landscape, that's probably what it's going to take for someone to beat Inoue. But the margins between weight divisions in the lower divisions aren't as big in terms of percentages. You know, I can't work it out off the top of my head or even remotely attempt to, but they might not be that different to say going from 12 to 12.5, going from 8.6 to 8.10.
It depends who you are, though. Moving up in some weights, even £4 is too much.
Yeah.
Some people are fine with it, some are not. You know, it does depend on the character, but you just think, because it's not half a stone, so you'll be all right. But it is.
Oh, there's always you come to the one where it's just not.
I know you're fighting, of course, but you know, if you can absorb the power, you know, enough to not be not scared, but rattled by it enough, you know what I mean, not to make him panic, then he might have a chance, because he does rally really well. He fights in combinations really good. Got a good engine himself, haven't he, Fulton? So you know,
yeah, for sure.
You tend to think with someone like who's technically and sound as in a way that you just make them work harder than they want to work by rallying. So you stifle their work, you smother their work with your work. When they get remotely close to you, you go like 100 miles an hour.
when he won the title against, he boxed Angelo Leo for the, and I think that like broke all kinds of punch stat records, and that was one of the first times I'd really seen Fulton and was really impressed by him. He kind of had that ability to roll and fire back in the pocket, and kind of showed a little bit of everything. It was really good in that fight, and I think that kind of, for me at least, kind of tips towards what you were saying earlier about some of his strengths might be his undoing in this fight, just being in there. But he has shown different wrinkles to his game. I think he's a really well-rounded fighter, Fulton.
I just think I know like all the things that he does really well, the fighting inside, squares his feet up a little bit, but also the lateral movement. I think Inoue is so accurate that you're almost inviting him to hit you. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not, that lateral move is not like a pendulum motion, but he'll catch you coming back with the movement. He'll let you move, and he almost like that's brilliant. Yeah, I'll catch you on the way back up. No, as you're moving back, or you roll underneath, I'll just catch you when you get to the top of your roll.
So I'm going to go through some stats for Naoya Inoue.
Brilliant. Then we go to sleep.
We don't. That's all right. I think you'll
not
enjoy
punch
the
stats today.
No, not punch stats.
I'm all for it. Then.
Okay, wicked. Okay, so he's won his first world title on the 6th of April 2014. So he's been a world champion now for over 9 years. He's won 6 world titles in 3 weight classes, including an undisputed championship at bantamweight. He is 24-0 with 21 knockouts, and is 19-0 with 17 knockouts in world title fights. So he has had 24 fights, 19 of them for world titles, and has won all of them. I know there'll be people going about the regular title with Jamie McDonnell. Okay, he went and knocked out Payano for the real belt in 70 seconds. So we'll give him the Jamie McDonnell grace period on the regular title. Even in the modern era of multiple belts and this and that, those are some stats for a fighter.
He's a ducker. He jumped over the flyweights, didn't he?
But do you know what? There's actually some people who do hold on to that, do subscribe to the fact he never got the names that he wanted at super flyweight. Didn't box Estrada, didn't box Gonzalez, didn't box Trisket,
Quadras. They were flyweights at the time, weren't they?
Superfly. They were at Superfly because he was boxing on those Superfly cards with Tom Loeffler, but he couldn't get them. I can't remember who he boxed. I think he boxed.
I thought they were flyweights, and he jumped over them and went straight to Superfly.
I just always assumed that was because they didn't want to fight him, not because they were scared of him, because no one's scared. It's just he was on the rise at that point and they were all established, and why would you fight him?
Yeah, because all the money would have been between them. I'm quite sure there would have been plenty of money in the Inoue fight, but obviously a much more dangerous fight.
And you get more for fighting somebody else who you feel like I'll probably get more kudos at that point for beating.
Yeah, and they're all part.
And it wouldn't be a disaster if I lost. Whereas, I think there was some of that going on. Yeah. But I mean, it's those numbers are amazing, and you think about it. He's been a pro for nearly 10 years, and in terms of moving up in weight, he did vault over flyweight, but light flyweight's 7 stone 10, and he's now at 8 stone 10.
That's a big.
So it's a stone in 10 years. It's not like he's rushed it, is it?
No. And just running through some of those wins as well. So he beat Adrian Hernandez for the light flyweight title. Had a defence, then jumped 2 weight classes to beat Omar Narvaez, who's a long reigning world champion at Superfly. David Carmona was one of the fights he had on one of the Superfly cards. And then you go forward, you've got McDonnell, Payano, and Rodriguez, all lasting a combined less than 4 rounds. Donaire, Maloney, who's now, of course, world champion. Right, Das Morenas and Dipen, there were those bubble shows, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
The Donaire repeat win by stoppage, and then, of course, Paul Butler. So there are a host of names. I think it's fair to say, though, that with Stephen Fulton being an unbeaten, unified American world champion, this feels like the one now for Inoue. This feels like if he goes in there and he blows Fulton out in 4 or 5 rounds, that this is the one to really catapult his career in a wider audience. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I do actually, yeah. Because Fulton's a stand-up number 1 in his weight class. I think you'd have to say that now. So I do think that, he's as good as all those other fighters had, Donaire especially, of course, but and great fighter. He was a great fighter, but people would always point at
his age.
Which I don't think he's warranted, especially for the first one. But but either way, this is a guy. He's boxing a younger, fresher. You would say, guy who's unified but on his way up, and moving up the weight classes and being favoured to be a world champion at the weight above. Though Figueroa still disputes the win, doesn't he?
Yeah, I thought Figueroa nicked that fight.
Yeah,
I thought he won that fight. But
either way, so I think you get more kudos probably off this one, which is probably not right. The Donaire wins were fantastic. That Donaire one fight anyway was great. And and in that fight he showed all other stuff that he hadn't had to show, maybe really didn't have to show before. How tough he is.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's you can punch and like body, head, timing, counter puncher, aggressor, takes a good shot. Loads of courage.
But this is the thing, like when you're talking about Inoue, and this is kind of throwing back to the Gervonta Davis stuff, he is so much more than a puncher. And I think this is the fight now where, I think people who haven't really watched an awful lot of Inoue are going to see what he's all about. Doesn't mean necessarily he's going to win the fight. I mean, it could be a very competitive fight that he ends up coming up short because he's boxing the number one in a weight class that's bigger than, he's moving up in weight. But this is where you get into the pound for pound realms, where you've got somebody who doesn't really have any obvious weaknesses. How would you set up a fighter, or what type of fighter would you look to? I mean, it's a question. How would you go about beating him? You want somebody, I don't know. I always thought, and I think about it more so now. I mean, might be proven wrong next week about him hitting featherweight and going up against like a Ray Vargas, someone who's big, really long, and just can try and stifle him on the outside. Outside of that.
Or someone like a Gervonta Davis, not Gervonta Davis because he's too big a weight, but someone like that with explosive power who closes the distance really quick, but then he takes a risk of getting caught.
Yeah.
So you've got to be, either way, you've got to be a brave fighter. You either got to have a stupid long reach like a Vargas and hopefully keep him at bay, and even that's difficult, by the way, or you got to be a massive puncher who's brave, like a Gervonta Davis, who thinks, but ultimately when he commits to an attack, he's all in. And then you catch him because everyone can be hurt. By the way, everyone can unravel. See, I think Americans will watch him, or not just Americans. Boxing fans will watch him and just go because he's rigid, and go Because then when you see a fight like that, you think I'll break him down to the body because you think because a fight is rigid, you think you have no lateral movement, then I can move around his target to beat him to the body. But his footwork's really good because he turns with you all the time, and he does that step back across as well. He steps across as well. If you're coming at him or if you're going back, he can cut the ring off really good. And also, you attack him, he can use his feet to get himself out of trouble to an extent. But he's always a presence. And also, moving in weights, you don't always have that presence as well. I used the word presence, I use it again. You don't always have that. Sometimes you're a big shadow in the ring. Canelo was. He moved up in weights and he still had it amazingly. But at light heavyweight, he didn't have that same fear. Even, you just didn't have it, so they weren't as intimidated. And you find that as you move up in weights, your physical presence is not intimidating. And you find, and he might find out in this fight. Fulton might go, I know he can punch, but I don't feel suffocated by him. You can't walk on me like just sometimes for some reason I don't know, like just the size, just can't walk up on him like you could at the lower weights. And if he can't do that, then that gives Fulton a bigger chance to get his jab working. And maybe to let his punches go because he's meeting him sort of he's allowed to judge his distance. What Inoue would do, he'll step up on you and you have to you have to adjust your distance to his because he's the one tagging, he's the one walking you down and you're his target. But if you can sort of meet him in the middle, or you can not push him back, because don't try and do that. Don't do that. Then I think then you're establishing your distance a bit better, and you get your punches go when you're more confident that your hands go. Maybe, but I still think he's still going to be the same presence because he's so sharp, so fast, so beautiful. It's a hard ask. It's a good fight though. I really rate Fulton, by the way. It sounds like I think he's going to get absolutely hammered, and I think ultimately he will get hammered. But I think he might be in the fight up until he does get beat up.
Andy, going to come to you for the first question on this. Naoya Inoue wins. Where does he land on your pound for pound list?
I mean, he's been in my top three for quite a long time because he's undefeated. He's moved up weights and consistently won world titles, and he became undisputed. So I think the last few years, my top three hasn't really changed. And I think it's always been Inoue, Canelo, and Crawford. I think that's probably been it. I don't think I've really deviated away from that too much. Yeah, he has to be right up there. You can always pick holes in anything, really, can't you? And look at the opponents and the time at which you boxed them and other people you might have got in with, but he's just done such a comprehensive job on everybody. And that first fight against Donaire was tremendous, but he won that fight.
Clearly won the fight.
Clearly won that fight. Donaire gave us something we weren't expecting, and it was brilliant. But it wasn't like it was... It's kind of strange how a fight in which there was such a clear winner has gone down as the classic that people talk about it as being. Because in many ways, it wasn't. Because for me, a fight to be a classic fight, it has to seesaw.
It was a great fight to watch, though.
But it was a great fight to watch.
It was a great fight to watch, but there was only really one winner.
Yeah.
But having said that, Donaire had his moments in the fight.
That's it. It was a great fight to watch, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a great fight,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, because, anyway.
I would say be careful about saying, like, he's been so dominant, and then you tend to go, yeah, but he's been so much better than all his opposition, so he doesn't get the credit. You can't make him pound for pound number one because he's not. It's not like Spence and Crawford. Whoever wins that will be pound number one, probably pound for pound, because of who they're fighting,
Who they've beaten,
who
yeah.
they're fighting, and who they're fighting each other right now. And that's it. And he maybe hasn't had that. But then, how highly do we rate Marvin Hagler? And he did have some outstanding wins, but for a long time, in his, there was a fair few of his defences that were way below his level. Not way below, but below his level, because he was so dominant. So, to be dominant doesn't mean people are shit, because he also boxed some great fighters as well. But he was just being dominant. It's not at one weight; he's moved up the weight, but to be completely dominant in almost all fights you're in shouldn't distract from you being a great fighter. I think
People are suspicious of it, though, aren't
they are. Yeah, they are. Who's he really
same,
fought?
same thing that me personally have with Terence Crawford, where he's been so far ahead of who he's boxed, but he hasn't really had the Spence fight is where I think we need to really see it. Okay, and Stephen Fulton. Barry, going to come to you first. Stephen Fulton wins. Where does he go on your pound for pound list?
Well, he doesn't go as high as Inoue, because Inoue's already there. But he has to enter, because he's just beaten it pound for pound, isn't he? Beating one of them, and it's a huge upset. And we'll see something we've never seen before, and then all of a sudden you have a view of him totally different to what you think he can do. That's, I would say, and you can't just say it would be size. But size would be a factor, of course. That's going to help him, but also it can hinder him if he's struggling for weight. It can be a plus or a negative, can't it? Wherever you look at it. So you have to think, you have to show something he's never shown before, and you've shown grit, but this would be a different kind of grit. I got a good chin, but this would be different, like a different resolve. If you can absorb his punches, so if you can do something that no one else has been able to do and make him question his work, push him back consistently, hurt him really, badly, then you tend to think, yeah, he maybe enters the top 10. It's a big way. The Fulton comes alive. Then he all of a sudden he's a big A side.
Oh yeah, massive. If he beats Inoue in Japan, that's probably
that'd be huge.
The biggest win that any active fighter has, really. I think.
Oh yeah. Rematch clause?
I don't know. Is there? There can't be. If he's the
know.
challenger, I wouldn't have thought so.
What do you mean there can't be?
There could be.
There definitely can be. I should definitely rephrase that. There definitely could be.
But if it's a good fighter, you want to see, and he'd be happy for him, because he got to go over there again. He might get twice as much. So it's and for the smaller guys, that big money's not usually there. So you take it. It'd be a big win. It'd be a huge win for him, and you do so much credit for it.
There was those. I think we spoke about this last week, where you saw Fulton arrive in Japan, and just the media surge of people around him. He's at the airport, and you can sort of see in his face where he goes, "Oh, Jesus!" And there's just a swarm of media. There was when we went to watch Inoue box in the WBSS. Peter Banker, who was doing the WBSS, he was like the head of media doing the credentials at the time. He said that they'd had like 300 applicants or something from Japan to come over to Scotland as media. And he's like, I had to say no. He's like, I could only have X amount or whatever. It might not have been 300, 200, 300. But it was a lot.
No, but sorry.
And so he said, I'm sorry, you can't come. They came anyway. They came anyway, and they all bought ringside seats. If you actually look around ringside, you've got... It's just a whole Japanese in a ring there. He's such a massive superstar.
I've had first-hand experience of this, and people, because they're not really on our radar as a sporting nation, Japan, I don't think people have any idea as to how big their stars are. Because when I was covering football, I covered a lot of football between 2000 and 2010, I remember Portsmouth signed the Japanese national keeper, whose name escapes me now. And whilst he was there playing for them, and he did play regularly, there were 10, 12 Japanese media who just basically moved to England and followed him around. When Junichi Inamoto played at Arsenal, I used to cover Arsenal a lot, and he didn't play a lot, but they were just there every week, whether he was playing or whether he wasn't playing, in numbers. You know, it's pretty incredible, to be honest, when you see it firsthand. The unveiling for the keeper at Portsmouth, I wasn't there myself, but a couple of pals were, and they said it was incredible.
That's mad,
it was
isn't it?
Absolutely massive.
Because when I moved
the whole of the national sporting media of Japan were there at Fratton Park. You know, it was something else.
Crazy. Because when I moved to London, it took my mother 10 years to come and visit me. Mad, isn't it? It was so popular.
But he is, and fair play to Fulton. I mean, Fulton's not. I mean, it's kind of, let's not discount him and what he's had to do. He had some good wins early in his career. He boxed Adam Lopez. He boxed Josh Greer. Boxed a couple of others as well.
I think he's got a legit record, hasn't he?
He has. He's
good performance against Danny Roman. Always like Roman. Good fighter.
World champion, legitimate number one in the division, which means.
And Figueroa's a good win. Whether he squeezed by, got the luck of the green, whatever. That's that sort of intensity he's had to cope with Figueroa, who's massively strong. Like, walks through a wall to beat you up if he can. So just to be, to get the win there, whatever controversial may be, is enough. Yeah, to show his class.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, we're going to move on and have a little brief chat about the fight coming this weekend from Oklahoma for George Kambosos versus Maxi Hughes. George Kambosos, Maxi Hughes, Oklahoma. Not three things that a couple of years ago, Andy, I don't think we would have been putting together. But I'm really interested in the fight. I'm really interested to see where George Kambosos is, because he had that brilliant night against Teofimo Lopez. He got paid an absolute fortune in 2 fights against Devin Haney. I think it's fair to say, I mean, he probably will disagree, but he's got all the achievements he could have ever hoped for in his entire career. He's probably made more money over and over and over again than he'd ever expected to make in his career. And I think this is a bit of a fiddly, awkward night for him. Or have I got my Brexit hat on, am I just cheering on Maxi Hughes blindly as a Brit?
No, I don't think so. I think he does have a chance, because with Kambosos, it is still quite hard to know how good he is, because I remember when he came over to fight Selby, and I just liked his demeanour all week. I bought his confidence. I believed in it, but I didn't know how good he was. And he did enough to win that fight against Selby on the night. If he'd run into Selby earlier in Selby's career, Selby would have beaten him, I think. Yeah. But he got the win, and the win against Lopez was absolutely massive. And you can never take anything away from anybody when they pull something like that off. Haney beat him comfortably twice. No shame in that, because Haney's very, very good. But as for exactly where he is, in terms of saying, yeah, he's definitely better than them, he's definitely not quite as good as them, I think it's quite hard to work it out. And Maxi Hughes, his story over the last few years, it's one of they're my favourites. Yeah. And we've had 3 of them in recent times, and they're all lads who are based in the same part of the world. Him, Jason Cunningham, Josh Whale. Like those are stories that I love, because fighters who put their heart and soul into it, had got to a certain level, looked like they probably weren't going to win that British title, which I think which is what it was for all of them, that they'd wanted so badly, had some bad luck running into really good fighters at British title level who, you look at them and think, well, they're better than British title level, and then they all got there. They all got there just because they just would not give up on it. And I just love that. And that's what happened with all of them. And it just makes you smile, doesn't it? When someone like Maxi Hughes and, the other 2, Jason and Josh, they graft. And there's plenty of other examples as well. And then it happens. And they don't get carried away with it. They just think, all right, I'm now where I always wanted to be. And I want to stay here as long as I can. Imagine if he wins. It'd just be such a, like you say, like Maxi Hughes up against George Kambosos, who in my eyes was recently an undisputed champion.
Yeah, he was.
In Oklahoma, and you get the win. It's kind of, people will roll their eyes at this, but it's like Kirkland, Lang, Roberto Duran. It's kind of, you just think, what happened there? When you look back on that result in years to come, it'd be great.
It's worth pointing out. I mean, he was kind of the standout success story of COVID.
Yeah,
in general.
absolutely he was. Yeah.
Maxi Hughes
Absolutely
was the shining light in COVID.
It started with that win against John O'Carroll.
So
didn't
I'm going to run through.
Yeah, it was the production park up in Doncaster.
I'm going to run through his.
Good touch of
yeah,
I'll do it for you.
I'm going to run through. So he beat John O'Carroll, which was an upset. He beat Viktor Kotochigov. I learned how to pronounce that from watching Barry.
That was a good win.
Paul Hyland Jr., Giovanni Straffon, Ryan Walsh, and Kid Galahad.
They're good wins, isn't it?
They're good
They're
wins.
really good wins.
Is there the oh my god, I can't believe he beat that guy win? Maybe
was Straffon
not.
the guy who beat Tennyson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, after that, he beat Ryan Walsh and beat Kid Galahad. Galahad was a close fight, but a scrappy fight, but they are, aren't they, with Kid Galahad?
Yeah, but those are two really good fighters he's beaten there. Ryan Walsh is a really good fighter.
So he comes into this.
I would say about it's the weight though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, he comes into this probably in as good a form as any British fighter, really. If you consider the wins that he's had and the level that he's had them at, I think he goes into this fight full of confidence, Maxi Hughes, and why wouldn't he?
I spoke to him last week. We had him on the Sky podcast. Great, you can find it somewhere if you want to. You don't have to. I don't know. It's like that. Every other week, it's good. Coming on every other week. When Gary Logan's on, really good. But anyway, and he was already over there, but he's just like so down to earth, like he just can't believe his luck. He's the proper story of boxing. People like him because like you said, he's the British. No, he just seemed he wasn't going to go to the line for win a British title, and he just put. And also to show anyone else when you lose and you think it's the end of your world and your life, that it's not, because he learned. And it's not a loss; it's a lesson. It is a fucking loss, and you should take it as that as well. You cannot go, oh, it's just a loss, it's a lesson, be all smiley about it. No, take it and suffer for it. You suffer for your art. You know what I mean? Look at me, I'm like Da Vinci Code. But no, I mean you suffer for it. It should mean that much to you. Every time you lose or you have a bad performance, you should feel bad about it. But don't let it consume you though. You got to move on. He's learned from it. He's learned from every mistake he's made, every lesson he's learned, and he's become a better fighter. And then all he needed was a bit of luck. Look at the green. That Carroll fight was a close fight. He gets the win. I don't argue again. He gets the win, but then that's it. That was the catapult. All he needed was that little bit of a rubber, a little bit of luck. But he didn't get the luck before.
That's it.
And that's all it takes. A little bit on your side, a little bit extra. That can't be a finger on it. Just a little bit more extra. Those last rounds or two, or whatever it is, to get you there. And then once you win,
yeah,
you just feel different. I don't know what it is about it. It's like when you pick up your first belt. It's meaningless, the belt you get.
But also, if you're him, and it would have been the same with Jason Cunningham, definitely. Well, I know it was.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you go from taking away corner jobs at 4 weeks' notice to boxing in the home corner with 10 or 12 weeks' notice.
Who do you want to fight?
That is really different.
Actually, it's funny because the more successful I got, the less notice I got. But you feel different, and I can't be a finger. You're the same fighter, or maybe you're not, but it's that confidence thing. You know, like you see it in a fight, don't you? You see it in any sport. Momentum changes. It's the weirdest thing, but it's that with your career. You get the win, you just feel different about yourself.
Well, people treat you differently. You can be telling people, I think I'm good enough to do this, but it's not until you actually do it that person who maybe didn't really give you the time of day all of a sudden now returns your calls or whatever, or they're just calling you up and putting their arm around you, whereas previously they weren't bothered. Stuff like that, isn't it? Sometimes
your career, especially in a sport like boxing, which is so much the stuff people don't see, because you come from like where I come from the small halls, £300 a fight sort of crap, or losing money on ticket deals, and people don't see that. They just see the guys who turn pro like Ben Whittaker and all the rest of it turn pro straight away on the topping bills within a week, but for most other fighters it's small. You go from there and the build up, but it's not that buzz. You don't get that buzz that you have. All of a sudden you got that buzz because you're on TV. All of a sudden people are taking notice, people are talking about you, and that buzz you never had, and you get it, and that gives you an injection of confidence or whatever it is, or rigor or something to want to prove then, and you want to be better. You don't want it to end.
Yeah,
sometimes the fear of this ending in your life is enough to draw you on to keep going. And he's at the career now where he's like, it doesn't matter what happens now.
Yeah, it's all bonus time, really. I mean, I'm sure he won't feel like that, but
no, he does. I think he does. He was sort of alluding to that. Listen, like I'm going in this fight, as an underdog, like I always have, and I wouldn't want any different. It doesn't matter to me, because I can just focus on, he's the first point you say, he can focus on his own work and just go about my business. And like, you know, Kambosos thinks he's going to walk. That's the thing. He thinks, and rightly so, and to be honest, on paper, Kambosos should walk right through him. On paper, he should do.
He's a heavy favourite for a reason.
Even though Hughes is beaten, he hasn't beaten one world-class lightweight.
He hasn't beaten anyone who Kambosos would have any problems with.
No, you wouldn't think so, would you? So, you know, you think that would be why? So he should. But like you said, we're not quite sure where Kambosos is.
And I think all of the things that you've mentioned there about Maxi Hughes' mentality, which I completely agree with. On the flip side of that, it's kind of what I was alluding to initially with Kambosos. Where is he? Is he thinking, I'll get rid of Maxi Hughes and then I'll fight not Haney, but another guy, Shakur Stevenson. I get a big fight. I get this. And even from a technical point of view, which is where I kind of wanted to speak to you about it, was the way that Hughes boxes. He is he's well organised, crafty southpaw, good feet, decent control of distance. We've seen Lee Selby. I mean, it was a Lee Selby. I think it's fair to say was not the prime Lee Selby. He's like a lightweight for a start. He's a career featherweight or a big featherweight, but still. And then of course Haney, who's a world class fighter, but neutralised him really without having to do anything. Didn't really have to box any differently from round 1 of the first fight to round 24, including in the rematch. So is there an upset potentially brewing, Barry, do you think?
I find it hard to see that, but I do think that, you know, he's expected to walk through him, and he does feel that way. He's got to feel that I'm going to walk right through him. But at some point, someone's going to grab him, or he's going to grab himself and go, but I definitely got to go through him. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to batter that. And I think about the next fight, and at some point, someone's going to slap you in the face. You slap yourself in the face and go, walk right through this kid now. And he goes in with a focus then. Just because you're supposed to, don't mean you're going to, and he'll know that. So because he's been that opponent. Lopez was meant to go through him, really, wasn't he? That's the truth of it. So he knows what it's like on the other end. So he'll be steely. I think he'll be focused for the fight. And I do think his energy I think Maxi might struggle with the energy of Kambosos. But Max Hughes is nothing great, everything good. Nothing great, though. And I think at this level, you have to do something a little bit great. So he'll be compact, keep his shape well. The jab will be the weapon that'll work for him, but he hasn't got a bullet jab. It's a good solid jab, but it's not a bullet jab. But the fact that he keeps his hands up, his elbows tucked in nice and tight, will cause Kambosos some problems early on, I think. Because I think, you know, Hughes would be brave to stand in the middle and throw, I think, but ultimately I think the energy of Kambosos and just the movement, well, I don't think he stops Hughes, but I think he ends up winning quite wide in the end.
He needs.
I hope I'm wrong here, by the way. Not I'm a massive Hughes fan. I hope I'm wrong, because I think his story is so great that if he gets this win, it's a real good feel factor.
Maxi needs Kambosos to underestimate him, maybe make a bit of a slow start, or just look to kind of take him out with one shot. And whilst you're not achieving that, Maxi Hughes is managing to win some rounds, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're behind if you're Kambosos, or you could be, and then you start to panic a little bit and you get even tighter looking for that one shot, and that's how you can lose, isn't it, basically?
Okay, right, we have come to the end of episode 22 of the Boxing Show. So before we wrap things up, we're going to do our predictions. Andy, going to come to you first on the fight that we have just discussed. Maxi Hughes steps into the Lion's Den of Oklahoma for his bout with George Kambosos. How does that one go?
I'll say Kambosos points.
Barry?
Wide enough.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I'm going to go for Kambosos by controversial split decision.
Oh, hello.
I'm going to predict the split, but I think it's going to be close, and I think that Kambosos is going to overlook him.
I don't think he will. That's the difference between us. I don't think he will. I know he's been on that big stage, and it would be easy to be underwhelmed by this, but I think he'll also know that if he did lose, then having met him, like, it's a while ago, and all the big stuff has happened since, and the money has come. He did not strike me as a guy who would underestimate people.
Also interested to see what he's like at the weight. He was struggling to make the weight for both of the Haney fights.
Yeah, good point.
And I think all of those, there's enough.
There's a recipe there.
I tweeted about it today. It's just there's enough little parts of it that to me could signal an upset.
There's a few pieces that need to fall into place there, but it's not impossible.
For sure. But I just don't think that Hughes is going to win the rounds that he wins clear enough to get it. And I think that he may win 3 or 4 rounds, and then there'll be a couple of close ones, and you could have maybe given him a shout to win the fight. But I think Kambosos wins like a 7-5, 8-4 in a fight where some people think they could have gone either way. That's how I see that one playing out. But anyway, back round the other way. Going to go to you first, Barry. Stephen Fulton versus Naoya Inoue.
Inoue, most definitely. How, though? That's the thing. I do think he gets a stoppage. Though I wouldn't be shocked if it was points. If you're betting, just bet on every... It could go early, but I don't think it will. Seriously, it's like that, isn't it? It's like, because I can see him landing clean early. I can see Fulton causing him problems. I think he gets a stoppage 10-12, where Fulton's been in the fight at stages, doing quite well, but just literally had the resistance punched out of him, and in the end, he's a little bit not defenseless, but
and the corner pull him out.
Maybe or the referee saves him.
I think exactly the same as him, basically. That he'll give a good showing. He'll be competitive until he isn't.
I can just see.
And then when he isn't, it will get a bit difficult to watch. And hopefully his corner, if that happens, they say that's enough now.
You can see 4 or 5 punches and answer going boom, 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 and him like willing to go, but not really knowing where he is, and someone somewhere going, that's enough.
Yeah.
I think so. I really like Stephen Fulton, and I like the way he fights. I like his style. I think this is going to be the big breakout win for Inoue. I think he's going to dominate the fight, and I think he'll stop him around 7 or 8. But I think he's going to hit Fulton early. Fulton's going to feel it, and then after that, he's going to dictate. I really do think that. And I do like Fulton. I can't get out of my head that he got hurt by Danny Roman, who's a good fighter but not a puncher.
Yeah,
and that version of him.
That first instance where he gets caught.
Yeah, that's going to be telling.
Big moment. It's always a big moment. But in the fights like this particularly, because of all the reasons Barry was talking about, even at that top level, you can get spooked.
I can't necessarily see it going early, but I can see Inoue hitting him with a shot, and he goes, "Oh, actually, that does hurt. That is, I can't take any chances here." And that's it. And I do think that this is going to be. It is going to be the I guess the tipping point performance for Inoue. Certainly in the States, I think after this fight, his trajectory goes up in another level. And yeah, I think he does a good job on Stephen Fulton, who I rate as a fighter. He seems like a great guy. He's come through and done things the right way. I just think that this is and I think Inoue knows it as well. With all due respect to Paul Butler, I think that was about the accolades and becoming the undisputed champion. Yeah. I think that he understands the threat of Stephen Fulton and will box accordingly and get the stoppage somewhere around 7 or 8 rounds. I think body shot. I think the body shot will be significant. So yeah. Anyway, that's all from us here on our Fulton Inoue preview. Let us know who you think will win in the comments. Stephen Fulton versus Naoya Inoue, and of course George Kambosos versus Maxi Hughes. But from me, Rob Tebbutt, from Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clark, thank you very much for stopping by for this episode of The Boxing Show, and we'll catch up with you next time.